Rod Mickleburgh and Gary Mason, our guests. They are both top-notch reporters and columnists for the Globe and Mail. Any surprises for you in this race so far, or what's gone on so far, where you have scratched your head, aside from the fact that Ted Field was all by himself, reporter Ted Field, trying to get in the door.
How lonely was he?
I know.
He took time to talk to me outside because he had no one else to talk to.
He was like the Maytag man in the lobby, all alone.
We talked about soccer in the Fraser Valley.
I bet you did. Okay, so, and any surprises?
You know, I actually thought George Abbott was going to do a little bit better than he did. I mean, I thought that there was some momentum building behind it. I mean, in the last 10 days of the campaign, I had a sense that the momentum that Christy had was slowing a bit. There were a couple polls that came out that really boosted George. I thought he was going to do a little bit better. I thought it was going to be George and Christy on the last ballot.
I did too. I was with you there. I was surprised. I thought he might come up the middle and take it. What do I know?
I was right on that one. I always thought George Abbott, not on many things, in spite of what I said earlier, I always thought George Abbott's strength was overrated because everybody liked George and they respected George, but George does not inspire enthusiasm. And this race depended on sign-ups and enthusiasm, and there's a lot of new members out there. And George would go to a meeting and everybody respected him because he's, you know, we all
hard worker.
Yeah, well, and he's smart and he cares about stuff and so on. But how many people would sign up a membership card, you know? And did he really have those hardcore organizers too? I mean, I always remember what Gary said when he went up to Kamloops and he was in a bar where Christy Clark was having a, you know, just a, here I am. And, you know, she comes away with 20 new members and things like that. That sort of thing I didn't think happened with George. And he had very little support in the Lower Mainland and in Surrey, you know, these big ridings, which still count for a lot in spite of the way the ridings were distributed. And Christy Clark did well in the rural areas. You know, that was supposed to be George's stronghold. And yes, he did okay, but Christy Clark also did well.
But you also had a preferential ballot. That was the big deal here. And you had two candidates who were polarizing, seen as polarizing figures, Falcon and Clark. And Falcon was people, you know, you had the sense that they weren't going to support Clark and Clark's people weren't going to support Falcon. So that was the formula for Abbott to come up the middle and claim.
So strategic? Go ahead.
But he had to be ahead of Falcon on first choices, and he was not, and Falcon was ahead of him. So even though he got more votes from Mike de Jong, when de Jong fell off, he basically split them with Christy, and Falcon didn't get very many of the de Jong votes, which was interesting.
Sure.
But he was far enough behind Falcon on first choices, which is based on sign-ups, that he wasn't able to parlay what Gary's talking about as second choices.
Well, in this type of ballot, I guess you would think strategically if you were a real political watcher or junkie. Like your second choice might be your real second, not in your heart, wouldn't be your real second choice, but you think if I put de Jong second, he's obviously going to be first out, that kind of thing. That's the horse race aspect, I guess.
You know, the thing that people forget, there was a critical vote by the party 2 weeks before this leadership vote on the weighted vote that gave all the ridings, you know, the same amount of, you know,
points,
strength going into this convention. If that hadn't happened, that would have changed the dynamic of the race completely.
Sure, and earlier, Gordon Gibson and Gordon Campbell, remember, disagreed on whether or not to have this kind of ballot.
Right.
And Campbell was against it, as I recall, and Gordon Gibson thought it was a good thing.
Right.
It turned out that if you looked at the popular vote, like just one member, one vote, Christy won that too. Falcon was second, and George was quite a ways back in third. And actually, the preferential ballot, in a sense, did help George. He got a higher percentage of those preferential votes than he would have under one member, one vote. But it certainly wasn't enough. Okay.
Do you think she'll reach out to some of the renegades, the Bill Bennetts? Bill Bennett or Blair Leckstrom?
I'll tell you one person she's not going to reach out to is John Van Dongen.
Apparently not, because
no, he was out there. He was George Abbott's pit bull and was out there trying to discredit Christy and her campaign as much as he could. He's already been mumbling about possibly leaving caucus, but there's no chance in the world he's going to get a cabinet post.
Who are the strategists in the back rooms? Patrick Kinsella was connected to Christie's campaign.
Yeah. I think the big guy in her campaign was Mike McDonald. Yeah. He was the co-campaign chair. He's had some experience in the Premier's office in the past. He and Christy go way back. They went around the province in 1991 trying to sign up candidates to run in that election. So Gordon Wilson, who was the Liberal leader at the time, could have status in the televised leaders debate. That was the whole point, to get enough candidates to give him status in that CBC debate. And they did it. And as a result of that, Gordon Wilson knocked it out of the park, and they went from 0 seats in the legislature to 17. So she and Mike McDonald have a role to play in that.
Okay, and those are fun times, because there was Judy Tayabji and Gordon Wilson, a little bit of a scandal. Oh my.
Fun.
Yeah, but what's interesting is the role of social media in this.
Yeah.
Do you think it played a huge role or not?
It's not clear. I still think it was good old organizing. Although a lot of people, of course, signed up online, but that's not really social media. Did you detect that, Gary?
I didn't really.
No,
I think it's so
either.
difficult to say, you know, how much of an impact it had. It's fun and it's entertaining, but beyond that, I'm not sure.
So for Premier-designate Clark to capitalize on her popularity, what does she need to do? Unity in the party, given.
Well, she has to show
family holiday.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
In February.
She has to show she's competent and that she knows how to be a premier. You know, I don't think she has to do all that much. People, you know, they don't expect that much from the government other than, you know, leave us alone, leave our taxes at a fair level, and, you know, get on with governing and correct things that need to be corrected. And, you know, other than that, if she displays competence, you know, plus her, you know, the attractive qualities about Christy Clark, it's a pretty good recipe. She doesn't have to do anything dramatic, I don't think. And of course, distance herself from the...
She's got to put together a cabinet. That's her first big job. And then her second big job is deciding what she's going to do about the HST. I mean, is she going to make a concerted effort to try and see this thing pass, to give it a chance of passing? Because if she doesn't, and that's a $1.6 billion hole in her budget, and she's going to have to, you know, reconcile that somehow.
Right, and it'd be nice to get that off the table.
Don't you think she will campaign hard for it?
I hope so. I mean, it's unclear. I mean, at the beginning of the leadership campaign, she was making sounds like she thought it was there's no chance in the world it was going to pass. That's why she was going to take it to a vote in the legislature. Then she changed her mind on that. So I don't know where she stands on
Inquiry into BC Rail. Will we ever see it?
We're laughing.
I know. I just asked the question.
It's a good question, and it's a fair question, and I would say no.
No. Not
there
not going to happen.
But I don't think it would happen.
So,
to think the Liberals would enjoy that. You know, if you're a Liberal, why would you have it? There's nothing in it for you as a Liberal.
It could happen if she calls an early election, the Liberals lose, the NDP get into power.
Yes.
Then the NDP could hold it just for, you know, just to spite and just to get material on the Liberals so they're out of power for a long time.
Okay, and on it goes. Now, as far as BC relations with Premier Harper, Now I've made him premier. Prime Minister
he knows
Harper.
He knows what you mean.
He knows he's Prime Minister, yes.
Does he ever?
You know, you listen to her radio show. I listen to her radio show. Good chops on the radio. I'll miss her. What do you think about her relations with the feds?
You know, I think they'll be fine. I really do. I mean, you say all sorts of things on the radio, and then now she's in a different role. I think she's going to try and come across as stateswoman-like as possible, right? And show that she's got the stuff to perform at that stage. I don't think she's going to go bashing the feds. I don't think it really pays off.
No, and she's got to look at BC Hydro, a whole bunch of stuff.
She may not bash the feds. I agree with Gary, but she will not have the relationship with Stephen Harper and the federal government that Gordon Campbell had. I mean, privately, he must have gnashed his teeth at a lot of decisions made by the Harper government. Didn't breathe a word of it in public. It was always on side, and he got a lot of stuff from the federal government. I mean, Harper's not a fool. He knows where Christy Clark stands on things, and you know, he knows how she's bashed him on the radio and what he said about the
prosperity mine.
Prosperity mine. Yes. About that was a dumb decision, and he very pointedly out here said, no, we're not changing that decision after Christy Clark campaigned about going to Ottawa and telling them what's what. So the relationship will be fine, but she may have trouble, you know, being heard and being taken as seriously as Gordon Campbell.
And she'll have to look at oil tankers. There's so much.
Oh, that's a good question, too.
Right. So it's all going to be there. The reality is, big job.
Big job.
Gary's got it right. It's going to be a wild ride.
He said that today. He wrote it in the paper. The gender card wasn't played, really. Nobody said, well, now they're saying a girl's running the province, but not yet. You know, it's politically incorrect to play the gender card these days, but nobody seems to be too concerned by the fact that we have a female premier.
Nor should we be.
Designate.
Yeah, I just don't. I think it's a non-story.
Yeah.
I know that Shelley Frelick wrote in the Vancouver Sun today that it's the elephant in the room. I completely disagree.
You do.
I didn't hear anybody talk about it. I don't think anybody is even. There might be a few people, Neanderthals out there wondering about it someplace.
Well, we'll see when we read your columns and other columns and listens to the men, the middle-aged men on the radio.
Well, it's good.
See if they're talking about her hair or her ankles.
Well, we talk about Harry Lowley's hair.
Well, that's true. Nice to see you. Come back, we'll talk about the NDP race.
Absolutely.
Coming up.
Yeah, next.
Rod Mickleburgh and Gary Mason from the Globe and Mail.